सदगमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमया ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सदगमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमया ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः असतो मा सदगमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमया ॐ शान्ति 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 असतो मा सदगमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्युर्मामृतं गमया ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति
Thank you, Ms. Mamta, for the wonderful rendition of the Panas Mabatti, Our Lamp of Knowledge.
Respected guest of honor, Ms. Ayshanie Medagangoda-Labe, Principal Ms. Milan, Director Ms. Shanta, respected parents, principals, coordinators, teachers, organizing committee, executive board members, and our dear delegates. Namaste, good morning. We welcome you to the opening ceremony of Ratabangla School Model United Nations 2021. I am Saharsha.
And I'm Rijal Parajali. We are the Deputy Secretary Generals of RBSMUN 2021 and feel very honored to take you through the opening ceremony this morning.
First of all, I would like to call upon the grade 9 student, Shreya Malla, to recite the Ratabangla School Model United Nations Anthem, specially written for the occasion by the eminent poet Mr. Ramesh Kakurel in 2005 when RBSMUN held its first conference.
नमस्कार विश्व डल्लो म मान्छे म जस्तै तिमी एक मान्छे तिमी झै म झै हुन् सबै मात्र मान्छे सबैको उही जात एउटै छ मान्छे न ठुलो न सानो सबै सम्म मान्छे छ कालो र गोरो फगत चर्म मात्र उही हात गोडा उही नेत्र गात्र नसामा उही रक्त रातो बगेको नुनिलो उही अश्रुधारा खसेको जगत एउटै हुन्छ साझा सबैको यहाँ छैन सीमा कसैले खिचेको तिमीको मको हौ यहाँ भाग गर्ने घृणा दुश्मनी बन्धुकामाझ छर्ने हँसाऊ अरू साथमा आफू हाँस बचाऊ अरू साथमा आफू बाँच बनाऊ मिली विश्व नै एक डल्लो नआओस् कुनै भेद वल्लो र पल्लो नआओस् कुनै भेद वल्लो र पल्लो नमस्कार
Thank you, Shreya, for that wonderful recitation. This poem truly represents the spirit of RBSMUN and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that all human beings are born free and equal and thus have to be enabled by each other to live without facing any kind of discrimination. Now, we would like to invite our principal, the backbone of RBSMUN, Ms. Milan Dixit, to address the audience.
Namaste. Keynote speaker, Ms. Ayshanie Medagangoda-Labe, delegates, principals, teachers, parents, and the RBS Model UN Secretariat members. Welcome to the opening ceremony of RBS Model United Nations 2021. I would like to extend a special welcome to Ms. Ayshanie Labe, the UNDP resident representative for Nepal. Thank you, Ms. Ayshanie, for giving us your valuable time to be with us this morning. It is an honor to have you here to share your insights, bringing your wide experience of having worked in international development around the world. Being prepared for the unexpected is what this conference represents. Little did we imagine that the day would come when we would be compelled to hold a virtual Model United Nations conference. Personally, I miss the excitement and the energy that a physical conference brings, and I'm sure all of you do too. I feel a little disappointed that we couldn't have you at the school smiling, joyful, and enthusiastic, looking so smart and grown up and professional in your formal attires. And of course, your high heels, not to miss that. It has brought, the virtual Model UN actually has its perks too, because it has brought us delegates from outside Nepal. A warm welcome to all the delegates, a special welcome to the guest schools. Thank you for joining RBS Model United Nations 2021. I'll name the schools, the guest schools. Cathedral and John Connon School, Mumbai. We have 20 delegates from there. Excelsior School, Kathmandu. La Martiniere School, Lucknow. Malpi International School, Kavre. Royal College, Colombo. Sanskriti School, Delhi. Sanskriti School, Kathmandu. We also have small groups and individual participants from Avian School, GEM School, Kathmandu International Study Center, Little Angels School, Little Angels College, Mount View English Boarding School, Bhaktapur, Srimati Krishna Devi Janta Secondary School, Malangwa, Sarlahi, St. Xavier School, Kathmandu, Yulin School, Kathmandu, Valley View English School, Kathmandu. A very, very warm welcome to the delegates from our own school as well. We hope you have a lively and memorable experience in the conference in the next 3 days. RBSMUN committee members, the executive committee, when you started planning the conference, you were hesitant and wanted to postpone it until it was safe to hold it physically. Very quickly, you realized that this pandemic would not go away that fast. And with your upcoming graduation, you had to adjust and adapt, and you did that marvelously. Once you started working on the virtual conference, you worked diligently, demonstrating true resilience and adaptability. Change, uncertainty, variability, transition, and novelty are a reality of life. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made this very, very apparent. To navigate this ever-shifting world, young people will need to be adaptable, and you have proved that you are and will be. This year, the executive committee members have selected the theme Defining Moments in History, a very, very challenging theme, where they will bring to you a blend of conventional UN bodies and specialized agencies, all discussing historical issues that have shaped the modern world. An unprecedented selection of committees. At the start, I was skeptical, and so were the coordinators. Why would you choose historical committees only when there was so much to discuss in current affairs? But it did not take long to convince us. And we really enjoyed listening to you and getting convinced. As an educator, I'm very, very fond of simulations. Historical simulations generate passion and excitement in the participants, bringing history alive. Although students can find much of the material to learn history and the skills necessary to be capable historians in a library, in a book, or with an online research, But they cannot Google engagement, they cannot Google passion or investment that a historical committee can bring. And that is what makes the Model UN so rich. Students cannot accurately take on a character or make viable decisions if they do not have a firm platform upon which to stand. And you are giving that platform with your wonderful historical committees. The sessions will inspire the delegates to dig deeper as they replay a moment in history using accurate background, but with possible alternate results. As students explore the complexities of history and make connections to current events, they reflect on the choices they confront today and consider how they can make a difference. Historical simulations are engaging and exciting. They are fast-paced and constantly changing, and they require students to pay attention and be ready for new information and turns of events. The sessions lend themselves to rigorous historical analysis and the study of human behavior. This increases the students' ability to relate history to their own lives and promotes greater understanding of their roles and responsibilities in a democracy. In addition, it gives them the tools and strategies they need to become thoughtful, responsible citizens. Delegates, in the next 3 days, you will be discussing challenging real-world issues, and we hope that your journey towards understanding them and taking stock of the differing points of view will make you stronger and help you to become proactive individuals who will work towards making this world a better place. I believe that the work that you do as Model UN delegates prepares you for the real world. It is not a pretty world, but that is all the more reason for us to strive to make it more tolerant and peaceful. The hidden curriculum of the MUN is that it promotes peace, justice, social justice, respect for human rights, and its acceptance of responsibility. Through this experience, you learn the skills of negotiation, problem solving, critical thinking, communication that will enable you to develop skills and values to resolve conflict and understand that discrimination and inequality are precursors to violence. What better than a historical committee to make that apparent? Teamwork and collaboration are very important life skills that the Model UN fosters, which is a challenge in most political leadership, as we have seen. In addition, the Model UN helps you to develop essential skills for the future, such as coordinating with others, judgment and decision-making, and most importantly, cognitive flexibility. The Secretariat team of RBSMUN consists of strong, dedicated student leaders who have worked independently with thorough attention to detail, as seen in the immaculate website, the carefully selected lineup of committees, and the agenda to be discussed within each committee. I have to congratulate the Secretary General, Devansh, Deputy Secretary Generals, Rijal and Saharsha, and the capable and talented dais members of the student-run conference. Let me now recognize the different role takers who have been behind the scenes to make this event happen. The logistic team who prepared the detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. Congratulations to the dynamic press team. They have taken on 2 roles in this conference. The first job, obviously, is to report on the conference. They have been working consistently. I've really enjoyed reading the blogs and listening to the podcasts. Their second role is to run the International Press Council, a fully fledged committee that they have initiated. I can see the IPC becoming an RBS tradition in the coming years. Well done, press team. Not to forget the design and layout team who provide finishing touches that work wonders. The IT team is the backbone of the virtual conference. They worked on the beautifully presented website and are working on live streaming this session right now. I would like to congratulate the RBSMUN 2021 Secretariat team for taking on the challenging job of organizing this unique virtual conference independently. Delegates, you are growing up in a world that brings challenging problems that have to be solved by citizens who are well prepared to think critically and act with deep commitment. The world needs leaders who care to change the state it is in and you will work and learn about how to bring about this change. On behalf of the teachers, I wish all the best for a successful event. Have a wonderful and stimulating conference. Thank you and good luck. Namaste.
Thank you, Ms. Milan, for your encouragement.
Defining moments in history, a theme that envelops historic issues that have shaped the modern world. A theme that aims to revisit critical moments in history in the hope of understanding where the key players involved made crucial decisions that impacted the course of events, many times in a negative way. Now it is up to you, delegates, as current global citizens with astute young minds, to see what you can do differently to change the course of history.
Traveling through the continents and traveling through time, we bring to you a selection of 8 historic committees, each promising an unrivaled, engaging experience. With a time period that spans well over a century, from as early as 1904 to as recent as 2020, here are the committees in order of their occurrence.
First, we have the Sumitsuin Privy Council of Japan that serves as the military high command and advisory council, which is chaired by Sanchan Hang Subba and Raj Yadav, with Rajwat Singh, Sanskriti Giri, Srijit Paudel, and Sambhavi Lohani as executive board members. This committee is from the early 1900s with the intentions of defeating Russia and establishing Japan as a global power.
Next, the Indian Decolonization Assembly, based in the year 1933, encapsulates India's persistent struggle against the British Raj. To fix a nation torn apart by polarizing opinions, chairs Anirudh Tiwari and Aribrat Chatkuli, alongside Asta Rijal, Dixit Sherpa, Utparga Katwal Chetri, and Priyam Bhattrai as executive board members, are looking to seal the kismet of 300 million people.
The emergency session of the Arabic states takes us back to the 1960s to revisit one of the most consequential wars the Middle East has ever witnessed, the Six-Day War. With the fate of the entire Arabic Peninsula hanging in a delicate balance, chairs Saharsha Dhantuladar and Shalin Baral, with executive board members Devansh Rijal, Ashri Bhatta, Saugat Shakya, and Avanish Devkota, expect decorated war heroes and renowned generals to decide if they want to share their homeland with, in quotes, the Zionists, and whether they want their holy city of Jerusalem still under, in quotes, wretched Israel's control. Now, 1979. The Historic Security Council sets a scene for a ravaging proxy war between two superpowers, USA and Soviet Union, both hungry for dominance in Afghanistan. Chairs Ashir Thapa and Arun Sitola, with their executive board members, Bibhash Thapa, Pritish Raj, Arya Prasai, and Suhasha Acharya, are looking forward to conduct meaningful discourse that can resolve tensions among all parties involved and restore peace in the region.
Now, in 1999, we have the historic North Atlantic Treaty Organization as an emergency cabinet in response to the NATO bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, to investigate the cause and discuss the course of action that needs to follow suit, while also effectively addressing the humanitarian crises in Kosovo. Chaired by Rachel Porajoli and Janit Vajracharya, with support from Udgam Bhattrai, Arraj Khadka, and Shibali Mishra, this dynamic committee aims to set a precedence to revolutionize future issues of sovereignty around the globe. आपतकालीन सङ्कट बैठकले सन् 2001 को नोभेम्बरमा सम्पन्न राजनीतिज्ञहरूको आकस्मिक बैठकको अनुकरण गरेको छ। सुब्रत बास्कोटाको अध्यक्षता र कार्यकारी बोर्डका सदस्य सर्वेशमणि आचार्य र अभिनव पन्तको निर्देशनमा बनेको यस समितिले दाङ सेना ब्यारेकमा हमला पश्चात आक्रमणकारी माओवादी र नेपाल सरकारबीच शान्तिपूर्ण वार्ताका लागि मार्ग खोज्नेछ।
In the past few years, our entire global community has felt the heat from the rising tensions between China and Hong Kong, from the overwhelming cases of infringed sovereignties to the presence of blurred borderlines. The Historic General Assembly, chaired by Arivrat Raj Pradhan and Laisha Lamithane, and executive board members Samman Manshakya, Ashray Raj Bhandari, Swechha Karn, and Samriddhi Pandey, along with their GAO diplomats, have many questions to answer and many problems to solve in the next 3 days.
A committee first of its kind at RBSMUN. The International Press Council gives journalists the liberty to be engaged in grueling debate while investigating the portrayal of the economically and socially catastrophic COVID-19 pandemic through multiple news portals. Chaired by Asmi Shrestha, alongside Meghna Karmacharya and Anugrah Rai, the final case study produced by the committee will surely be worth a read.
Now, we would like to introduce the members working behind the scenes. First, we have the IT team consisting of Shlok Tital and Biwa Basnet.
Then, for the design and layout, we have Miran Ranjitkar and Yashashwi Amatya.
The heads of logistics, Bishruti Rijal and Tisa Manandar, with core logistics, Riyam Basnet and Sashwat Lal Shrestha.
The international press corps team, Meghna Karmacharya and Saisha Joshi.
And lastly, the graphic designing club, especially Ashray Raj Bhandari, Bishashank C. Aryal, and Saujanya C. Aryal. Now, I would like to welcome our Secretary General, Devansh Deepak Dutta, to give his address.
Honorable Chief Guest Ms. Ayshanie, delegates representing nations from around the globe, ladies and gentlemen, Namaste and a very good morning to you all. I welcome you warmly to the Rato Bangla School Model United Nations 2021. Despite the challenges all of us have faced over the past year, I am proud as we open the first virtual iteration of our conference, continuing a legacy of providing a platform for valuable discourse. This year, we bring you a selection of committees like never before, each one of them addressing a historical agenda. Be it the Russo-Japanese War from the early 20th century, or the Maoist insurgency in Nepal from the early 21st century. As such, we have selected an apt theme which reads, Defining Moments in History. Not only are delegates to discuss incidents that have shaped the world as we know it today, but each one of us is defining a moment in history as we partake in the first and probably last online RBSMUN ever. The past year has been astonishing to say the very least. With unprecedented polarization, we've witnessed how divided our world truly is, not only as an international community, but as a society. Early in the year, after the brutal murder of George Floyd, with conservative-leaning American media houses choosing to prioritize isolated events of riots and looting over the potent conversation about police brutality, media biases were solidified like never before. As COVID-19 engulfed the United States, right-leaning media dismissed its devastating effects only to propagate the offhand remarks of the now ex-president, potentially leading to the state the nation finds itself in today. Roughly around the same time, our own nation, Nepal, suffered the brunt of poor governance as our own prime minister dissolved the parliament, shaking the very basis of our democracy. After a nearly 4-month-long lockdown, which did nothing but cripple the economy and displace thousands of daily wage workers, COVID-19 cases were still increasing exponentially day by day. An otherwise low-lying pro-monarchy movement gained traction like never before. Hundreds of thousands of individuals took to the streets, rallying for the ex-king to take his throne back. Across the border in India, the Citizenship Amendment Act, better known as the CAA, fueled communal tensions once again, causing the death of several individuals in mob clashes. After 73 years of independence, after 73 years of partition, after 73 years of decolonization, it only makes us ask how well the Indian social fabric holds in today's state. Amidst the aforementioned negatives of the past year, we've also witnessed some equally surprising positive events. After decades of animosity between the Arab nations and the Israeli coalition with the West, the United Arab Emirates signed a treaty with Israel, recognizing its independent status and committing to establish diplomatic and trade relations with them. On the other hand, in Afghanistan, the Taliban and USA signed a deal, pledging peace, and the US and its allies promising to withdraw a significant portion of their troops from the region. Each of these events from just this last year allude to a grander series of occurrences in the past, a grander series of mistakes from the past, mistakes that have defined today's world. The issue of media biases, for example, alludes to the decades-long unchecked tendency of media sources to prefer one end of the political spectrum over the other. Recent pro-monarchy movements in Nepal highlight a greater nuance of weak pillars of democracy and governance. These things have existed ever since the end of the Panchayat era. Similarly, the CAA protests allude to unresolved communal sentiments which have existed for over a century. Strengthening UAE-Israel ties, while positive, bring to light the animus and inability to find common ground between the two blocs. Finally, while Afghanistan may be inching towards stability, the US-Taliban peace deal only reminds us of the instability the nation has been through. 18 years of American presence, and to a greater extent, detrimental American intervention ever since the Soviet-Afghan War. First, funding the Mujahideen, and then, quite ironically, the Taliban themselves. As such, this year, in every committee, we seek to rectify past mistakes and to explore alternatives. In the International Press Council, representatives from various different Western media organizations will come together to debate and to draft reports to study and remedy media biases. In the Apatkalin Sankat Baitak, representatives will explore the possibility of a Republican Nepal while judging the role of the monarch as they simultaneously seek long-lasting peace amidst the Maoist insurgency. Chancellors and governors in the Indian Decolonization Assembly will debate the optimal course of decolonization, the possibility of partition, and sensitive issues of religion and race. Military commanders and ministers in the emergency session of the Arabic states have the opportunity to act more reasonably for their own good and to hopefully establish a sustainable future with Israel. And lastly, delegates in the Historic Security Council will seek to protect millions of innocent lives, attempting to reconcile fractured national and international regimes that threaten to bring Afghanistan to ruins. In addition, in the Historic General Assembly, we seek to reignite the conversation pertaining to Hong Kong's freedom and independence, a conversation which has faded in the recent past. In the Historic North Atlantic Treaty Organization, we seek to question one of the most controversial interventions to date, one which potentially breached Yugoslavian sovereignty and the UNSC's protocols. Finally, in the Sumitsuin, we seek to simulate the first modern war, a conflict which inarguably made way for the Great War and World War II, a simulation which holds the possibility to circumvent such a future. With this opportunity over the next 3 days, delegates make the most of it. In doing so, make sure at the end of this conference, you're not left questioning what if to yourselves. As a reserved 8th grader attending his first MUN conference, I was dumbfounded by everyone else's eloquence. I could barely muster the courage to speak. While I was equipped with every relevant fact at the tip of my fingers, shackled by my self-doubt, none of them saw the light of day. I'd ask myself, what if I was wrong? What if my research was nothing more than a compilation of inaccuracies? The next year at an international conference in India, things were not a lot different. All of the first day, I was as silent as one could be, raising my placard at the very moment dais members would announce that they'd not be recognizing any more speakers, just to make me feel like I tried. I'd ask myself, what if they'd laugh at me? What if they'd dismiss me for the severely nervous 13-year-old I was? In hindsight, however, I asked myself, what if I had only tried harder? What if I had pushed myself a little further? What if I had focused on my own speeches rather than on others' opinions? It dawned on me that what ifs happen to be a focal question in our lives as MUNers. We often create scenarios in our heads which impede our own ability to achieve, only to come back much later and ask, what would have happened if we did things slightly differently? But it so happens that what ifs are a central part of model UNs as a whole. In committees, we discuss agendas which are related to governmental failures and in certain instances, failures of the United Nations itself. Each one of these incidents could have played out in a plethora of different ways. And each one of these scenarios are related to a what if. Delegates, over the next 3 days, you have the opportunity to explore what ifs within moments that have defined the past and present of our world. With the power you hold in your hands, be the flag bearer of meaningful change. The opportunity to amend past errors of judgment and to delve into endless possibilities awaits you. Delegates, do not allow your differences to overpower the ability to find a consensus. As you acquaint yourself with said mistakes, recognize the price we've had to pay for each one of them, and commit that we'll be a different generation. A generation which is more tolerant. A generation which is able to consider differing opinions. And a generation which is willing to compromise even when we're at odds with one another. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Devansh. It really has been a busy yet memorable journey for all of us. Ms. Ayshanie-Labe is the current UNDP resident representative for Nepal. Prior to this appointment, Ms. Ayshanie was UNDP's Deputy Resident Representative for Program and Operations in Nepal since August 2018. She also served as UNDP's Deputy Resident Representative in the Kingdom of Morocco as well as the Republic of Algeria. Early in her career, she served in Bangladesh as the Head of Office and Coordination and Aid Effectiveness Advisor to the UN Resident Coordinator. Additionally, she worked as a portfolio manager for UNDP Bangladesh in charge of agriculture food security and rural development portfolios.
Before joining the UN system, she worked for public sectors such as Ministry of Education in Sri Lanka, Faculty of Agricultural Sciences in Gembloux, Belgium, EU delegation in Bangladesh, and NGOs like Overseas Mission Secretariat and Helen Keller International Bangladesh on program management, research and analytic work related to poverty alleviation, youth entrepreneurship, food and nutrition security, and natural disasters responses. Now, I would like to welcome Ms. Labe to give her address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General Devansh Dutta, Ms. Deputy Secretary General Ms. Rasha Parajoli, and Mr. Deputy Secretary General Ms. Saharsha Tuladar, dear delegates of Ratubangla Model United Nations and the rest of the schools that are taking part in this event, namaste and very good morning. I would like first to begin by extending my felicitations to all delegates participating in the Ratubangla Model United Nations. And I also would like to thank Ms. Shanta Dixit and Ms. Milan Dixit for extending an invitation for me to take part in this August gathering. The most certainly, many future world leaders and pioneers are today around this virtual platform. I wish and I hope and I'm certain, benefiting from one of kind of learning, experience, one in a lifetime. And probably most of you in your future will think about this past, this history as a very interesting and encouraging experience. And also, as much as you do, most of your listening parents and friends, I'm sure, will also remember this moment of your life, which is once in lifetime. A model UN such as this, you expand your horizons on global scale. This kind of events, in addition to most of what you mentioned, is a very unique platform for discussing global issues, where all the delegates will deliberate on international perspectives on behalf of a country's foreign policies at a time. But it doesn't only give you, the delegates, a chance to showcase your ability to debate, but as Mr. Secretary General mentioned, to research, think, interact, and enhance your knowledge of past and current world affairs. We the people, as the United Nations Charter mentioned, and as the Secretary General mentioned, and as the principals mentioned, continue to face many challenges, conflicts, pandemics, injustice, fast-moving climate challenge, and inequalities in all sectors. Empowering you, the you who are today in front of these computers, the world young people, 1.8 billion of you, is a must to solve these increasing global challenges. Your theme this year, Defining Moments in History, will give you the opportunity to travel across most probably 200 years. I went through some of your study notebooks. Across Japan, India, Afghanistan, Hong Kong, Arab states, former Yugoslavia, US, and finally Nepal. You will take stock. What worked, how it worked or not, whether it worked, what did it change, what did we learn, what can we take from it to shape the world. And as Mr. Secretary General mentioned, today we still have constitution crisis around the world. We still have today some 17 non-self-governing territories across the globe, counting some 2 million people. The Indian decolonization that you are going to study, at that point of time, there were 300 million people, but it was some time back. At that point of time, in India, cholera pandemic struck the Bengal and rapidly raged across the country and beyond. That was in mid-80s, 1820s. And we don't know the exact numbers, how many people died. Some mention 15 million. 200 years later today, we have the COVID. As of yesterday, claims 96 million of cases, of which 2 million had given their lives. You spoke about 6 days. I mean, you are going to study about the 6 days of war in the Arab-Israel war. Today, 5 decades later, divisions, ramifications, taking sides, happening all over Middle East, even though some progresses are being made. Today, 5 million Syrians have fled the country and 6 million are internally displaced, with more than 13 million people in need of assistance in Syria alone. Conflict has caused untold suffering for Syrian men, women, and children. In the Middle East, the most unspoken country today is Yemen. More than half of the 30 million people today are risk slipping into the worsening levels of hunger by mid of this year. In Afghanistan, as Mr. Secretary General mentioned, after enduring decades of war, people are, according to the UN humanitarian coordinator, mentally and exhausted and hungry, not for food, but for peace. Yearning for an end of civilian deaths and suffering. This is about 15 million people in Afghanistan. By participating in the Model United Nations, your understanding on these issues will be widened. You will experience what it means to listen to each other, to disagree, to agree through dialogue, to accept others that may have a completely different viewpoint than yours. The imperative is to find ways to navigate through these differences and to find a consensus and uphold solidarity and cooperate for lasting solutions. The most recent consensus that we reached in the United Nations 5 years back is about 5 simple things, probably. People, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. These are what we call the 5 pillars of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Today, the world has a blueprint, a path to reach these 17 goals that you have next to me. And these goals, by reaching those goals for humans to live in dignity and to pursue until 2030 and beyond, where you are part of that responsibility. Dear delegates, the current pandemic, the COVID-19, has brought before us massive setback to the sustainable development. Progress continues to be eroded on health, education, women's rights, and poverty reduction, to name a few. And our near singular focus on pandemic means that other global priorities, such as addressing climate change, is set aside. In less than a year, we have seen social and economic damage on a scale not seen since the Second World War. At least 71 million people are being pushed into extreme poverty, less than 100 rupees a day to live with. Approximately 270 million people face acute food insecurity, not having 3 bowls of rice a day. Lower and middle income countries, such as Nepal, have suffered the most, with an estimated 23% of the dropping of working hours. People lost jobs. 240 million jobs have been estimated lost last second quarter of the year. Tourism, something very important also for Nepal, supports 1 out of 10 jobs in the world and provide livelihoods to many millions of people everywhere in the globe. Today, with COVID, this has gone down. Nature, tourism is related with nature, biodiversity. Today, looting, poaching, and conflict around nature is increasing because nobody is going out and make the nature live that was happening prior to pandemic related to tourism. The World Bank projects that the remittances, the money that was sent back by the people who were living outside their countries, what we call remittances, is going down. There will be 78 billion dip, around 14% of the total amount that the world used to transact in a year. There are approximately 1.6 billion children, youth like you, are out of school. Even before the COVID pandemic, there are lots of women, close to 240 million women and girls were abused by their very much trusted intimate partners. Past year, since the pandemic, this has gone very, very high, very much up. And violence against women, particularly domestic violence, is being highly reported in all over the world. In Nepal, if I may, some 8.5 million kids like you are out of school, and thousands of teachers are unpaid. There are 1.6 to 2 million people lost their jobs. They are daily workers. They are in the informal sector. What does it mean? They're not recognized by any register and hardly have coping strategies. And because they are in the informal sector, hardly protected. They can't get a bank loan. They can't ask for a loan from the neighbors. So the coping strategies are very few. Some 6 million people in Nepal is said to have lack of legal papers, identity card, or birth certificate, or something that is very much needed to get some relief or something that is from the formal sector. More than 500,000 people, these data are as of last year, had been returning back to Nepal and looking for jobs, and they have stopped sending money back home. In addition, if you are a returnee, if you are a woman, a Dalit, a disabled person, a Muslim, you can find more difficulties, stigma, more than before, and you will not be treated equally by the society, creating increased stress that ends up in hate, lack of trust, violence, and finally suicide. So this is what the COVID has shown us as a reality. In addition to COVID, let me, if you allow me, to speak about another important theme and issue. There are high temperatures. The ice is melting. Pollutions were high. The past decade was the hottest on record. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are record levels. Storms, fires, floods, drought, our uncommon force are now too common and devastating. 38 countries have already declared a climate emergency. They recognize the urgency and the stakes. Pressures that we put on the planet have become so great, the scientists consider whether the Earth has entered a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. That was the theme of United Nations Development Programme's most recent Human Development Report that I invite all of you to take a look at. The age of humans, that is Anthropocene. It means that we are the first generation to live in an age defined by the human choices. In this age, the main risk to our survival and to our development is entrusted to ourselves. The United Nations Secretary General appealed to leaders worldwide in December last year to declare a state of emergency in their countries until carbon neutrality is reached. It's time for all countries to do the same. Pandemic recovery and climate action must be and are the two sides of the same coin. This is why to build a future in Nepal and elsewhere for the world that is fair, just, and sustainable, as Ms. Dixit mentioned in her opening remarks, we must choose a development path that strikes balance between people and planet. Time is running out and we don't have a choice. Everything we do, every decision we make as the United Nations, as governments around the world, as individuals, companies, private sector organizations, we must do it as a sense of urgency. In Nepal, preventing and reversing climate change is our number one priority. UNDP that I represent is working with the government, federal governments, provincial governments, local governments, as well as all non-governmental organizations to work on this path. We support solar energy. We work with researchers to see the impacts of climate change on the melting glaciers, disaster preparedness, how to manage better the waste, how the small enterprises can develop green and sustainable business ideas, how the climate crisis could be contained and achieved as such sustainable development goals. And all of that, as I said, by leaving no one behind, which is the principle of the entire 2030 agenda. We cannot do this alone. Collaboration, cooperation, and dialogue are fundamental. And that is what you are trying to simulate for 3 days. It will not be easy, but you will get the experience for doing that. So, looking at all of you, I am today heartened that you will be our future advocates. My future is in your hands on peace, on sustainable development and human rights, societies to enable the people to live in dignity, that what they deserve. You will have a unique perspective in our organization, United Nations, and I urge you to further share these perspectives with your colleagues. Urge you to understand beyond resolutions, beyond motions, beyond debates, what it means not to have, being able to breathe air to eat for your hunger, to drink clean water, to go to the toilet when you need to go to a toilet, and to have peace in mind. That is what is United Nations is for. And then not to forget that each of us have that responsibility for that as citizens of a global family. The United Nations stands with you, and as you stand up for the shared values and global solidarity for public goods. And remember, as the second United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Dag Hammarskjöld, the youngest person in the world to hold that position, a great statement that I hope you will be inspired by, said once, the United Nations was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. I think that provokes our mindset to understand what the United Nations was created for. Get inspired, live your passion, remain focused, have a plan, have a method, and make your dreams and of the dreams of the others a reality so that your life can be lived in dignity. I thank you once again for the wonderful opportunity, and I look forward to have all of you in the United Nations and look forward that we all together get out of this pandemic and meet in person whenever that the time permits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Labe, for your inspirational words. We now have a musical performance by the head of logistics, Bishruti Rijal.
Thank you, Bishruti, for this wonderful performance. Before we close the opening ceremony, we have to acknowledge a few people without whom this conference wouldn't be possible. First and foremost, the IT team, Shlok and Biba, for spending weeks working on the website, making the small list of the changes we suggested, to staying up for hours every night perfecting the setup and the design. settings on each Discord server, we're not sure what we do without you.
The design and layout team, Miran and Yashashwi. The amount of patience both of you have truly baffles us. Thank you for bearing with every small edit we had to make to the study guides, and a special shout out for the amazing background pictures on the Instagram polls we have been uploading every practice session.
The heads of logistics, Bishruti and Tisa, core logistics, Sashwat and Riyam. The number of phone calls you've had to make, the sheets you've had to update, and emails you've had to respond to. Behind the scenes, it's you all who ensured a smooth sailing.
The press team, Saisha and Meghna. From editing study guides and blog posts to recording podcasts and interviews, for all your amazing content, despite the fact that it's been a struggle to say the very least.
The RBS Graphic Design Club, Ashray, Bishashank, and Saujanya. We think you all will appreciate an Instagram shout out more than anything we say here, but honestly, we can't thank you enough for designing each of the posts this year and pulling through even on the shortest of the notices.
Our principal and coordinators, Miss Milan, Miss Rajni, and Miss Rekha. Thank you for always being there to guide us, only a phone call or a text message away, motivating us during our lows and cheering us during our peaks.
The DAIS members, innovative with their respective committees and agendas, meeting all their deadlines and working hard during practice sessions to ensure their delegates are prepared and practice for the intense debate to follow.
And lastly, thank you to all the participants from Nepal and around the region who have joined us believing in Rathabangla School Model United Nation. Now, I would like to call upon our dear Secretary General to declare the conference open.
Before I declare the conference open, I too would like to acknowledge the organizing team of RBSMUN for making sure we've made it this far. I'm sure we will facilitate an extraordinary online model UN experience over the next 3 days. On that note, with the power vested in me as the Secretary General of Rathabangla School, Model United Nations 2021, I declare this conference open.